YourTown television program. I'm your host today, Paula Joy MacNab, and as always, I have the great pleasure of introducing some fabulous topics and fabulous guests to entertain you, delight you, make you think, question some of your values, and generally have you have a good time while you're watching this program. So my first guest today is Chad Hawker, and Chad is an amazing, I have a personal bias here, financial guy. And you're a senior loan officer, and I've had the great privilege of working with you personally as well as professionally as a real estate agent. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you here for many reasons. And one is, in terms of what's going on in the world, I think there's a lot of myths and misconceptions. And so I want to get into that later in the hour. But first I want to start with you, because you're very interesting. And you bring a lot of a personal ethic, a very strong personal work ethic to what you do. And I've experienced this personally. I've seen it with my clients. And I wanted to ask about your background, how you developed your work ethic, what's gotten you where you are today.
I'd love to share. So I've always been what many call as type A. In fact, many have called me triple A.
Yeah, I think that would be true.
I just, anything that I do in life, I like to do my very best, and I teach my children that as well. It's just life. You set goals, you do your best to achieve them. But prior to this career in the mortgage business, I was a professional athlete. And there's something about athletics when you really are trying to be aim to be the best in the world. Right. And specifically, I did Ironman triathlon. So that sport is one that is long. It's typically an 8 to 9 hour race. It takes a great deal of preparation. You could almost say you're treating yourself in somewhat of a robotic way. Mm-hmm. So you're training 40, 50 hours a week. Mm-hmm. You're making sure you're eating right. You're sleeping right. You're listening to your coaches. You're following your heart rate. I mean, there's so much that goes into that career. So in doing that, it taught me an even higher level of sacrifice, commitment, perseverance, because no matter what you do, you're going to run into challenges, and you have to learn how to work through those challenges and become stronger mm-hmm. because of those challenges. Mm-hmm. So prior to going into this career, I think it taught me an extreme work ethic. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And now I take all that I learned and I apply it to this business. And to give you an idea of why that's important is the mortgage business has changed a lot.
Yes.
You hear in the news, on the media, that it's become extremely difficult for people to get mortgages. Mm-hmm. Not only have the guidelines changed, compliance, you name it, there's just, I would need an entire show to mm-hmm. explain the changes in the mortgage business. So you throw all of that on someone, and to help someone navigate through that and help them gain the perseverance and the knowledge to get through it with you takes a special skill and determination, which I have tried to apply to this business. It also comes from the angle of not only doing the business and having the perseverance, but doing it in a manner that brings fluidity mm-hmm. to the process, mm-hmm. pleasure to the process right. from the standpoint of it's very stressful for people. Yes. So how do you take this experience and make it enjoyable, get to the finish line, and people literally are not pulling their hair out? It's an art. It's taken years to get us to that point. Mm-hmm. And when I say us, I have a team mm-hmm. that works with each client to help us get to that point.
Right. You have an amazing team, and that really speaks well of you as well as them, because they want to work with you and they do support you. I want to take it to the beginning, Chad, because I think so many people, myself included, in the past really were frightened, to be candid, really mm-hmm. scared of this process. Generally, in residential, we're making the biggest investment of our lives, a home.
Absolutely.
So to take it kind of back to basics and break it down, because in breaking it down, it really isn't, in theory, very complicated.
Right.
in practice is where it gets muddled. So take us back to the beginning. So I'm going to say I'm a real estate agent, and I have a client who I found their dream home.
Yep.
And then what happens?
What happens?
From your point of view, from the financial point of view, and how do you interact with me and the person buying the home? Give us a very simplistic, so a child could understand it, overview and outline of how that process works. It would be very useful.
Sure. It's a terrific question because, as you had said, there are so many false assumptions about the industry, about the process, and I really try to not only help people to educate people, which I believe education is empowerment, and we can allow us to work better together, and then you're empowered years to come. So it's super, super imperative, whether it's your first home or your 10th home, to allow me to do what is called a pre-approval. And I work with agents that know the importance of the pre-approval. A pre-approval is simply step one before writing an offer.
So I want everybody to hear this. This is the before writing the offer.
Before writing the offer. Before finding that property.
Before finding the property. So tell us why this is so important, Chad, because I see that what people did years ago, I think actually stands them as a disservice now because they're working on incorrect information.
Correct.
So any one of you who've bought homes before, throw out all that information and come with the beginner's mind. Come with the open mind of this is a different environment. These are different financial products available to me. I need to listen and learn. And that way you'll get your dream home.
Exactly. So this pre-approval process is really, like you said, it seems elementary, but it's critical. And it's critical because there are parts of the qualifying process that 99% of the people don't even know exist. And what I do is literally have someone complete an application, which can be done electronically or with me in person or one of my team members. And then we just gather the basic information, which includes...
What is the basic information?
2 years tax returns, 2 months bank statements, pay stubs, if applicable. Some people are self-employed, so they don't have pay stubs. So really it's the income and the asset documentation.
Pretty simple stuff when you break it down that way.
It really is. But what that information does is it opens me up to the world of you. And I know all the moving parts of you and how you fit within these many different lending guidelines. So self-employed people, so many different moving parts, you know, different kinds of self-employed people and those moving parts, different types of assets that are being used and how those factor into the qualifying process. This also then not only allows me to determine your qualification, but it helps me then create a dialogue to determine and help you figure out what type of mortgage works best for you, as well as to create a plan of where you fit. Sometimes the lender will qualify you for more than what is within your comfort zone. So we got to make sure, really, more importantly, that what we are determining fits within your goals and your needs, which is why I consider myself more an advisor than a provider. You know, I've got to help you, advise you as to how we go about accomplishing your goals and needs, and then help you long afterwards to manage that mortgage. So we go through this pre-approval process. It's oftentimes, it does a couple of things. For a first-time home buyer, it empowers them, you know, because they have made so many assumptions up to this point, and now they realize through the confidence that I'm giving them that they can actually do this. And these payments work for themselves, it fits within their financial plan. At that point, where they were on the fence, they're like running off the fence. They're like, okay, agent, let's go find the right property.
And that's when they're calling me, right?
Yeah, that's when they're calling you. Exactly, Paula. For the 10th time home buyer, they are also empowered. Again, if they're just in their minds with whomever they're talking, their family, their spouse, themselves, thinking, that seems like a good idea, but I don't know. And then they think about it and they think about it and they dwell on it. And once they meet with me, it's clear. It's full clarity to be able to move and act and do it.
And that's what I found so interesting is that it really breaks down to simple math. It's just what are things going to cost and what are the assets and how can you make those match? And so really what I want people to get a sense of in watching this program is that there is a very delineated process. It is simple, not easy necessarily, and there is stress to be expected along the way. And
Definitely.
because of your experience, you have learned how to manage that stress for people. So go forward from that
Sure.
pre-approval letter. So they've gotten their information into you. I come along, find the perfect house. Then what happens?
And what happens? The pre-approval letter is also one of confusion. It's important when you're writing an offer to have a very specific pre-approval.
Yes.
A pre-approval
Yes.
that matches your offer. Let's say someone is pre-approved for a $500,000 purchase price. But what happens if you go and write an offer for a $450,000 property? You want that pre-approval to match. You don't want to say you're pre-approved for $500 when you're only writing an offer for $450. So I do that. It's amazing how few loan officers do that. I generate a specific one for every offer. And sometimes it takes 5 offers.
Right.
But that is critical.
And that's an evidence to me of how very thorough you are and how very committed you are to having the process go from start to finish.
Thank you.
Because you know what it's going to take. You're not just slamming something up there and going, well, I gave the pre-approval letter. You're making sure that every one of those steps is a fit.
Absolutely.
And that's critical to the success of the project completing.
Absolutely. And again, not to kind of wrap up this pre-approval, unfortunately, and I won't specify anyone in particular, but this pre-approval process has become very sloppy for a lot of lenders. They just literally throw it against the wall and hope it sticks, and then once in contract, they hope it works.
Right.
You can't work that way. There's too many sacrifices being made and time spent and money spent once in the process. It's imperative, and now agents know this, that if they've never seen this lender pre-approval from some unknown person, it's definitely cause for concern. And so, especially in this area, a lot of agents want to make sure, whether presenting the offer or getting the offer, that they know who they're working with, and it is super important.
Well,
so,
it makes a difference between the deal going through and not going through.
or acceptance or not acceptance.
Acceptance or not acceptance. And if this is a home that someone really wants to be, knocked out of it because of a paperwork thing is heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
So continue on the outline of, so then what happens next? Just give us a quick overview.
Yeah.
Because we could go in depth. We could have a program on each one of these, and I want to do that.
And there are a lot of steps in the process that you can overwhelm people with a lot of the disclosure process and the timing that we have to deal with our team.
Right.
But the key points of the process is, okay, you get an accepted offer. We then go through a disclosure process, which any lender has to go through. And this disclosure process was part of all the laws that were passed after the meltdown. That we have to thoroughly and accurately disclose worst case scenarios of fees. So they can see everything broken down, which requires us to work with the title company, the agents, to make sure those disclosures going out.
So there's no surprises financially.
Literally no surprises.
Is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So we take the client through the disclosures. We gather what other financials we might need. Maybe a couple months has passed. We need to update the file. Once everything is signed, which is primarily done electronically, which is helpful, we then submit it to what is called our processing department. They then do other preparations to prepare it for the underwriter. Also backing up upon those disclosures, we order what's called the appraisal. The appraisal determines and confirms the value of the property to ensure for the client, for the lender, that the value is supported by an appraisal.
That they're really getting value of what they're paying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
Very important.
Very important. So we go through the underwrite. They provide us with whatever remaining items are needed. And we provide those items. They issue what is called now a closing disclosure. This is yet again another document that breaks down in even more detail. Again, the initial disclosures are a high estimate. Right. Everybody's covering themselves from a worst case scenario. The closing disclosure, or the CD, is much more specific. So 100% of the time, it's going to now be less than what it is on the initial disclosures. Once they sign the closing disclosure, by law, we have to wait 3 days before they can sign those final loan documents, which they will do typically at the title company. They will send in whatever amount is due for closing. And then after signing, usually the next day or 2 days later, we've closed escrow.
Right. So the value of all of this is really to protect the consumer, is really what I see. And so attitude of this is to protect the consumer, this is not to make you crazy with the 4,000 documents that, I'm giving you and your real estate professional and your lender are giving you. It's really to protect the consumer. And I think breaking it down into those steps and those processes really can give people a comfort zone about, yes, I really can do this. It's not as overwhelming when you take it one step at a time.
Exactly.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And so the value of someone like yourself as an advisor and working with me, a professional, is to get people, first of all, having an overview, I think, is extremely important, of where you're going to go from A to B.
Yep.
Then how are we going to help you get there so that it's a joyful journey?
Yep.
And yes, even joy has stress in it.
Absolutely.
But to really be effective in that. And so I think that this kind of information, and there's so much more that we can talk about.
Yep.
But I think today has given people a good overview of what the process is. Now, if things are taking, just touch on this, it's taking a wee bit longer now.
Yes.
We've got to wrap up in a minute, but just touch on timing, because people's expectation about timing and cost is what makes people crazy.
Yeah.
So how long does this take now?
So again, every transaction's a little bit different.
Right.
Since you have all these disclosure pieces that you have to go through, it is doable to close a loan in 15 to 20 days, but a little unlikely because
so what would
the quicker
be
that it is,
realistic?
30 days is a realistic escrow time frame.
Okay.
That allows the client and the agent to go through their own inspections. It
Right.
allows us to go through the disclosures and the appraisal and the submission and the approval
Right.
and ordering loan docs and the closing disclosure and all those steps. And
Right.
remember, 30 days is really only like 22 days, business days.
Right.
We don't count the weekends.
Exactly.
So it still moves by pretty darn fast in a 30-day escrow.
Right.
So that tends to be the time frame that relieves a little bit of the stress from people in their normal, because people are living their normal lives while going through this process, right? It becomes kind of like a second job through those 30 days.
Right.
So yeah, I always like to say 30 days is the key.
And it's a good expectation.
Yep.
So Chad, tell our viewing audience how they can reach you. Just give your
Sure.
contact information.
So you can reach me either on my email address, that is chadhawker@gmail.com, or you can reach me on my cell phone number, that is 831-521-9378.
Great, thank you for that. Well, you have been amazing amount of
you.
information.
Man, that time went by so
I
fast.
could talk to you. In fact, I do want to have you back on again
for
because
sure.
there's so much more that we can get into. And thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
if you need to reach Chad, you can always reach him through me. I'm Paula Joy MacNab, host of YourTown television program. Thank you for joining us today.